Broadcasting live from the Subaru of Gwinnett studio inside the Sonesta Gwinnett Place Atlanta Hotel. It's time for Travel Safely with Bryan Mulligan. Travel Safely is presented by Applied Information, creator of the Travel Safely smartphone app.
Welcome everybody and welcome to Travel Safely. I'm your host Bryan Mulligan and we're coming to you live out of the Subaru Gwinnett Place studios of Business RadioX here in Gwinnett. And what we're going to talk about in Travel Safely in this radio show is we're going to talk about transportation, technology, entrepreneurship, and the future. And because the future of transportation affects us all, so this is an important topic to be able to give some proper review and discussion and guest input on. We as a society, we kill in the United States 40,000 people per year in transportation, and we injure millions. Transportation is a key part of our economy, so we have to do it, but the society cost is just huge. But as a society, we've got used to it. And so nobody really notices. We all put our kids in cars and wish them luck and send them on their way. But something has to be done, and that's what Travel Safely is all about, and trying to come at these problems in a new way. The governments, whether it be city, state, federal, they run the transportation system. And we've all, over the years, we look at the government hopefully to say, so what are you guys going to do about it? What are you guys going to do to keep us safe? But this approach hasn't worked. Over the last several years, the number of deaths and injuries on the roadways have stayed more or less the same, and we can't seem to solve the problem. It's a time for a new solution, a new attempt at this problem. And this involves a partnership between the private sector and the government, but also the innovation guys, the technology guys, and a new way of looking at things. And that's what we're going to explore here on this radio show. Women who the mothers of our children, run a significant risk of being killed and injured on the roads. And that's something worthwhile addressing, particularly in our male-dominated transportation technology environment, is what do the women think? And so today we're going to be talking about women in transportation. And today's guest with me is Winter Horbal, who's a professional engineer in transportation. She works for Temple Incorporated, and she's, probably most importantly, is a mom. Welcome, Winter.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And just want to apologize up front. I'm not 100% today, but we're still here, and I'm excited to, try to give some insight.
Oh, Winter, you're always 100%. You might just have a bad throat, but you're 100%. So the topic of the day is women in transportation. So thanks for joining me on the show. And what we're going to try and do is provide a background and an insight for women who are thinking about careers and for what it might be like to work in transportation. And so one of the things that I've been working with Winter for a long time, or for a number of years, we'll get into that a bit later. But as a young woman, Winter, you're going to college, and then one day you wake up and you say, I think I want to be in transportation. What was that story? How did that all work?
Well, it was a long road with a lot of different turns in it, but it definitely happened, and I'll try to make it brief and short. I am from a small town in Alabama, and I graduated from a small high school of about 75 people in my class. Yeah, it was obviously with me being from that small town, there was a lot of people who didn't think I could do what I was going to do, or would believe I would be where I am today. But I made it, and it was basically over 20 years ago I left and went to Auburn University. I was initially in pre-pharmacy.
Pharmacy?
Yes.
Well, that's some way from transportation.
Yes. So I wanted to do engineer. I wanted to be an engineer, but because of the market at the time, And because where I'm from, we're supposed to, yes, education is great, but getting married and having kids is very top priority with the small town I'm from.
Wow.
So basically pharmacy seemed like a better avenue for that.
Would it be fair to say that seemed like a woman's profession in your town, as opposed to transportation?
Yeah, probably so.
might be a little bit more
yes,
out there for the folks that you left behind.
I was just informed that it's much easier if you're a pharmacist and you have children than if you have projects ongoing within the transportation world and engineering world, and you have to take a short leave. So yes, it was something there. But once I got to college, I was in the pre-pharmacy role, but I kept taking the maths and sciences even beyond that role. And then I met a lot of different engineers, which was nice. And then I decided to change. I decided to go into engineering, and I chose civil at that time. So still with civil, there's so many specialties within civil that you basically graduate from school and you still have no idea what you want to do.
Yeah, I can speak to that.
Yes.
I'm also an old civil engineer.
That's
yeah.
right. So after doing my master's there in environmental, I got a job here in Atlanta for environmental engineering, and that lasted a couple of years. I got really bored with that, so I got it. I was actually then asked to come to a firm to do site civil, which all I had was school experience, and did that for a couple of years. And in the middle of learning about transportation and helping another division while I worked at that company, I just ended up falling in love. Something that was supposed to be temporary and supposed to be only a 60, 90-day task ended up me sticking with it. So,
well, what a story. And to come from a small town in Alabama to be, one of the most respected transportation professionals here in Atlanta. I'm sure your family's very proud. So, you ended up working for Temple Incorporated, and that's when I first met you, in fact, 4 years ago. So talk to me a little bit about what Temple does and the story about how we came together with Applied Information and how we started on this journey of trying to make a difference.
So Temple is actually a distributor and a manufacturer of certain transportation items, and but we represent many manufacturers. We provide the services. We provide kind of the avenue to get to the customers so that we can, sell to them what we feel is the best products out there. And yeah, like you said, it was now over 4 years ago I met you, and I was 36 weeks pregnant. So
I remember that you were in a slightly different shape.
Just a little different. And you gave me your, pitch. It was really short because it was after an organizational meeting, and it was more of just an introduction. And it sounded like if I was in my customer's shoes and I was doing monitoring and everything, I would want this product. So that's when I told my upper management and said, you guys need to meet this guy.
All right. In fact, here I want to give a shout out to one of your nearest and dearest customers at the time was the city of Marietta, and the city of Marietta has been integral in this road to leaving to TravelSafely and TravelSafely app and the work that we've done together. And so just want to give a shout out to the city, who was the early adopter of Applied Information's technology, and a shout out to you who had the faith in this new startup to be able to do some stuff that other people hadn't done before.
Yeah, no, I mean, Marietta definitely saw the vision also. And I've got to come along with watching this vision and seeing it grow and seeing how it can help people. But it was nice to have a customer who just saw it and said, let's do it, let's save lives. And having that same common goal, it's been great.
I'm going to come back to you in your role as a mother and some of the things to do with TravelSafely and moms and so forth. But now I'm going to proceed to bring a slightly more somber note to this, and this is not going to come as a surprise. You've heard me talk about statistics, and I'm a number guy. And a person dies on the road every 88 million miles of driving. And you think, well, that's hardly anything at all. What's the probability of dying? It's got to be remote when one person dies every 88 million miles of driving. But Winter, I know that you drive about 50,000 miles a year, a result of your job.
Yes, sir.
If you look at that on a statistical basis, you've got a 1 in 120 chance of dying on the road before Lily goes to college, your daughter.
Yes, and I know you are a numbers guy, and that's a number that definitely got me thinking. My daughter is now 4, and to think that I may not get to see her graduate just makes it a little more personal. It lets me know the issue that is on the road.
And I think that business of trying to make it personal, it's certainly, those are the things that have motivated me, that we've all lost friends in car accidents. And it is really personal. And that's, I think, that motivates us in the private sector to look to the government and say, of the government of various types. And City of Marietta was a great example, and Atlanta and Renew Atlanta, we'll talk about some of these things as well. Is a really chance to try and make a difference over these next couple of years with this technology that's available, to us to use to try and solve these problems. I often say now, when we're out there talking about the future, that the future of transportation is electric, connected, and autonomous. What in this work that we've done over this last while, what about all of this that gives you some hope?
Well, and even going back to your personal, I do think we need to make this personal in everyone's life, because right now we see this as just something that happens. We're not, it's just in general. Unless it's happening to us at that instant, we don't. So with the future of transportation in electric, connected, and autonomous, which you actually have been great at introducing me as well as others and educating us on this, because initially, this whole autonomous vehicle thing, I was not all about it. I am a type A person. I like
control freak.
Yes, I like to have control. So thinking that something else is controlling driving down the road was not something I wanted to even consider. But fortunately, once you get to ride into even a semi-autonomous vehicle, you see how important it is and how easy it is to get adjusted to it. And the fact that it's not just you driving, you have someone else with you driving at all times. So the likelihood of you having an incident, there has to be a mistake on both sides to do that. And that's just, it's reassuring. And now I'm hoping this technology, and I think it is going to be there. By the time my daughter turns 16, she's going to have a very safe vehicle, that's going to help. And I think that's, definitely something we need to all really be pushing on, appreciative of, and just moving in that direction. As far as the electric side of it, my biggest sell on that is I don't have to get out in this cold weather, which we have today, and pump gas. I just plug it in at home, and and I'm good to go the next morning when I head out. So I definitely like the idea of that. And then the connected side, in seeing how, we're all connected. We all have these smartphones. And in seeing how easy it is to connect on the transportation, different mode use level with each other. One thing I've mentioned before is I live on an extremely curvy, hilly road, and the cyclists love it. And even though I know there are cyclists on it, very often when I'm coming home with my child from daycare and she's trying to talk to me about her day and, wanting me to look at pictures and stuff, and I have to tell her I'm driving, but there's still some distraction, a lot of distraction in that. And it takes my mind off of thinking about, if I go around this curve, am I going to, see a cyclist? So with being connected, we can actually know
that there's a cyclist ahead of you.
Yeah.
Before you. So hold that thought about being distracted, because I'm going to come back to that after our break. So what I'd like to do is introduce 30 Seconds with Sarah.
The This is your transportation news in 30 seconds or less with Sarah. The Georgia Department of Transportation is exploring the idea of a truck-only highway. According to WABE Radio, it'd be the first highway of its kind in the United States, stretching nearly 40 miles from Metro Atlanta to Macon, Georgia. Governor Nathan Deal praised the concept, saying it's an important part of what our future transportation system should and will look like. Back to you, Brian.
Thanks, Sarah. In case you're just joining us, this is Travel Safely with Bryan Mulligan. I'm your host, Bryan Mulligan. And what we're trying to do is talk about entrepreneurship, technology, transportation, innovation, and the future. And the objective of all of this is how are we going to save lives, improve traffic, drive commerce, and help the environment. With our guest, Winter Horbal from Temple Incorporated, and we're discussing women in transportation. Before we went to break, Winter, you talked about distracted driving. Mm-hmm. And in the transportation industry, for a lot of people, that means you mustn't have cell phones. But the statistics seem to be showing that it's not having the cell phone in the car that's distracting, it's the conversation. Mm-hmm. So if we don't have cell phones in the car, we mustn't have people in the car. What's your view about all of that with your daughter and so forth?
Well, and I will say, as we've been moving to become connected with the phones, that's one thing that has definitely come into play, is people being upset that we're actually using a phone to save lives. But and it's just like I tell them, I am more distracted driving down the road with my child in the back seat than my phone ever distracts me. I mean, and honestly, when I'm driving around too, I get distracted just by looking at houses, driving by houses, and just kind of taking in that stuff. And that's where I notice more than anything that I need a little bit of assistance in letting me know to focus. This is what's going on the road. So, yeah, I think the distraction is not just your cell phone. I think it has a lot more to do with the conversations, and like you mentioned. And
if we can use one's cell phones to provide a layer of safety and go bop bop, red light ahead, if the technology thinks that you're going to miss a red light, can only help save lives. I'm also going to touch on one other thing. In fact, last night somebody was talking to me about statistics and autonomy and this technology, and we've had a very tragic incident where a woman was killed by an autonomous vehicle in Arizona, and that was tragic. And there's been calls by some people to say, oh, well, take autonomous vehicles off the road. This is way too dangerous. Don't do it, can't do it, shouldn't do it. Let's all be scared and retreat into our little shells. Mm-hmm. Well, a pedestrian is killed on the roads in the United States every 1.6 hours.
Wow.
So, guys, we've got to keep all this in perspective, and the data is showing that the deployment of technology as layers of safety could definitely contribute to the solution, because otherwise we're just stuck at killing thousands and thousands of people a year. Moving over to the women in transportation, I want to explore that a little bit more. It said that, entrepreneurs who disregard the talents of women means they are at competitive disadvantage because they're only accessing 50% of the talent pool. So how do we get more talented people like yourself in this transportation business?
Well, I think it's just educating. I mean, where transportation was when I first got into it and where it is today has changed, and it is changing extremely fast. It's definitely in the technology world, and people I don't think understand that. I think they just see the traffic signals. I mean, when I even speak to people that may be in a different profession or something, they never understand that there's a traffic cabinet that's got some intelligence to it that's actually helping those signals do things. They just think it just turns.
It just happens. I mean, the surprise we get when we open a traffic cabinet and show people what's inside, everybody goes, wow, I had no idea there was so much clever stuff inside.
Exactly. And so I think getting that information out and so people will understand that transportation is actually a great career path. You are moving forward with future things, and you're helping to save lives. I mean, that's the number one goal. as far as an engineer. Our number one goal that sometimes we forget about is to first save lives, make things safer.
Yeah, and coming on the back of the tragedy in Florida where the pedestrian bridge collapses, we can see how devastating it is when we get it wrong.
Yep.
And so more talented people that join us, and especially women, I really enjoy the perspective that the women and moms bring to what's been historically a male and grumpy, staid profession. Mm-hmm. And now with bringing technology into play, it makes it more exciting as a career path for talented young women. And so we're excited to, in our professional societies we both belong to, we're seeing more and more young women coming into our industry, and that's fantastic. I'm going to touch on entrepreneurial success. As you know, we both work for private companies. Mm-hmm. I've done startups all the majority of my working life. And so I have this expression that entrepreneurial success is based on two things: relationships and credibility. Entrepreneurs out there, listen up, because Winter is one of the best relationship people that I've ever met.
Thank you.
I think I can get on with people, but I've got nothing on Winter. I've been in situations where I'd meet a guy for the first time and meet his name, and Winter knows who he is, where he lives, his wife, his children's names, what he was doing, what they did in the summer. I mean, do you really like people that much, or is this all just a construction in support of your business?
Yes, no, I really like people that much, and I think that's why I'm where I am today and in this side of the profession, because I do. I mean, and I get it honest. My mother loved everyone. I mean, just everyone she met, tons of love. And then my dad is a very social man, so I think I get that honest. But I do love people. I love getting to know people. I love spending time with them, and especially when you're getting to know people who have the same ideas as you, who are in that transportation industry, and if we come together, we can make a difference. And so, yeah, I will say I like to know people's spouses and even know their kids and things like that.
Well, good for you. And you know, as an entrepreneur all these years and being out there and trying to sell new product, that's been key to the success of TravelSafely and Applied Information is your relationships. Because if I'm out there as a technology guy and I'm trying to prove to people that they should buy my stuff, the reality is they don't. Trust, particularly for a government guy to say, well, I'm going to trust buying this unproven stuff, involves having a trust in you, and that conveys then to the product. So entrepreneurs out there, don't neglect your relationships, because that's what it's all about. The credibility, yeah, that comes from the technology, and it all has to work. But that's not enough. You got to have relationships too, and you can learn a thing from Winter in that area. You want to talk about credibility? You're one of the most credible and respected engineers in Atlanta. How do you maintain that credibility? I mean, how does it actually work? I mean, entrepreneurs, listen up now as well, because Winter's credibility is paramount. And how do you maintain it?
And I appreciate those kind words. That makes a person feel nice. I would say your biggest thing is integrity. That is one thing that if you lose that, it is so difficult to gain back. And fortunately, I work for a company that is all about keeping integrity. And they say if something smells fishy, it probably is, and you should walk away. So fortunately, they allow us to make those type of decisions.
Actually, I'm going to interrupt you there, because that's a hugely important point for any entrepreneurs out there. You're so desperate to make a sale that you're prepared to compromise your integrity to try and make a sale and think, well, I'll catch it up later, or I'll figure it out in a contract. But what you're saying is that just walk away.
Yes, and even, I mean, again, you're building these relationships with people. You want to make sure that what you're selling them is something, if you were in their shoes, you would want to buy, that would be beneficial and helpful. And I think that shows through also when you're, I guess, to say making that sale. But the relationships, integrity, keeping those two at the top is first and foremost.
So we're going to have one last pitch to try and get any young woman thinking about a career to join us in this transportation business, and help me set for the scene for a young woman thinking about going into career in transportation. Why would somebody do that? I mean, we talked about that in the past with living a worthwhile life and all of that. Share some thoughts on that.
So I think if we're specifically speaking about women, because yes, more than 20 years ago when I started this path, this engineering path, there were a lot of men in the class over women. And fortunately, what I'm seeing today is that's changing. And I think that has been the more of informing, women especially that loves that math and science, has that math and science background and loves that this is a great profession. And also, again, we're like your phones. I mean, we're having to keep up. There's something new and there's something different, and it's changing really weekly. I mean, it's gotten past the annual change. Now we're coming up with ideas to have safer roads, safer modes of transportation for everyone and touching everyone. And yeah, that just knowing that you could be designing, engineering, coming up with an idea that could save someone's life, especially children. I think that's something to think about. It's like you said, worthwhile.
Yeah, I mean, I've sometimes thought about that. I'm older. I'm coming towards the end of my career. I guess I'm still not planning to check out anytime soon, but nonetheless, I'm still trying to decide what I want to be when I grow up.
That's right.
But for those of you guys out there thinking about a career in transportation, you can say to yourselves, how many lives do you have to save to make your career worthwhile? Mm-hmm. And the answer is not a lot. One. If you can make a difference like that, potentially our careers are worthwhile. Moving on to a slightly more maybe uncomfortable area, there's all this talk about Me Too and Time's Up out there. There's just been a male-dominated environment. Do you think sexual harassment is a problem in our industry? What?
Well, given that you know me, it would take a lot for me to feel uncomfortable. I do not see sexual harassment as an issue. I've fortunately never been in a situation that's occurred to me in the many years, over 15 years I've been doing this, actually out in the professional world. I think it too with women, I'll claim this, we are different from men in the sense that we're on the emotional side. So when someone says something to us, we definitely will take it the way we take it as women. I've just found that as long as you handle it and you're very confident, and some women can do this, some can't. So other women need to be of assistance with ladies who are a little less, I don't know, I guess you could say not
confident, yeah.
Maybe confident, but I think there's a little bit difference. I mean, my mom was not as out there, I guess, like I was. She was a little more kept to, in herself and listening to people. I actually talk way too much. I need to learn from her. But I really think that just handling the situation by walking away in a professional, respectful manner. And also, I'm very vocal. If someone says something that does offend me, I will let them know. It takes a lot to offend me, but I will let them know because I feel like that's part of the relationship.
That's actually a great point, is that this whole business of actually just straight talking never went amiss. And anything that one's uncomfortable within the working environment and in the professional societies and the professional environment we live, I guess it could just be dealt with straight talking. So yeah, that's great advice for everybody. So I think we'll sort of wrap up there. I thank everybody for listening to Travel Safely, brought to you by Applied Information. This show is about transportation, technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship, and we've touched on all of those items today, affecting the future of transportation that affects us all. So given that we're used to living in a society that kills 40,000 people a year in transportation, something has to be done. And the time is for new partnerships to solve this problem between the government, the private sector, innovation, technology, and new ways of looking at things. And today we were talking about the women's part of that, and I'd really like to thank you, Winter, and thanks to Winter Horbal. As I say, I'll call you professional engineer, Temple Incorporated, and mom, first and foremost. Thanks for joining us to make the world a better place.
Yes, thanks for having me.
All right, until next time, this is Bryan Mulligan signing off from Business RadioX, and travel safely.